Hey everybody, it's Nick. This week we had a little bit of negotiation and a whole lot of fighting, and my players sort of danced that fine line over figuring out how much is too much trust. But first, when last we left our heroes. So there's a whole long thing behind this, and I can't explain all of it. You have to go watch all of last episode to catch fully up, but my players are after an artifact. There are several different factions that are sort of pulling and tugging against them, trying to say, you know, go here, go there, get this artifact for me, for me, for me, for me. Basically, there's a beholder in their territory who has asked them to go get the Codex Mortis, the Book of the Dead, and there is a wizard who is claiming to be the rightful guardian of that codex and saying, no, actually, you should bring it to me, and if you do, I'll reward you in your fight against the beholder. And currently, they at least believe that the codex is being held by a vampire queen known as the Dead Lady. So there's all these factions at play here trying to get them to let them have the codex for one reason or another, or the players maybe even keeping the codex. So, but first they don't have it yet, so they have to go and get it. And their plan is to go to the island colony of New Andrast, which is a Renoran colony, a colony from the nation of Renora, and they have been here before and is currently infested with undead and vampires. So it's kind of a bad news place right there, right here. So they make their way to New Andrast and they begin to plan their heist. And this is where I rolled out something that I don't actually use. I misuse this all the time, and I think DMs underutilize it all the time. It's weather. I just said there's a thunderstorm. It was loud and storming and raining and dark, and that ended up having a small impact on how they went about things because, you know, it's raining and dark, so it's harder for them to see things, but it's harder for them to be seen as well. And so I think weather is one of those things that we as DMs don't actually use that much, and it's kind of a real shame. You know, thinking about my own use or lack of use of weather is tough because a lot of times you could just do a lot with it being sunny or snowy or rainy or storming or hot or cold or whatever it would be, and that may impact, or at the very, very least, just make the world feel more real. Just make it feel like a real place. Like, oh, it's rainy today. Okay, that doesn't change anything my character does, but now I can sort of I've been in rain before, so now I can maybe picture a little better where my character is and feel that a little more. And so just, if you even just a little bit of description, the rain pours down and you hear the loud rumble of water as it hits the ground and it seeps into your armor and it's wet and soggy and you just feel it as you move around and your boots are wet, and then just do that, and for the whole rest of the session or the whole rest of the time they're in the rain, the players can feel it a little better. So sort of a challenge for me that I tried to do this week, and a challenge for you as well. Use weather more in our games. So anyways, it's raining, it's storming, and they are assaulting a vampire's stronghold. And they make their way up to the wall, and they scale it pretty quickly. At this point in their level, their 7th level, and where they have like abilities and magic items and spells and stuff, scaling a 50-foot wall really actually isn't that big a deal. So there wasn't any checks at all. It was just one dude flew up, tied a rope, everyone climbs the rope, no big deal. And so they're trying to figure out how to get from this wall to the citadel or the fortress, the main building inside the keep, the castle itself. They're in the walls now. And so they're trying to figure out how to cross over, and there's like a small gap, and they'll jump it, they'll tightrope walk across, they'll climb the rope, and a couple of them fail some checks, and they notice a figure getting closer to them from the battlements. And at this point, Clement rushes forward and casts suggestion on that person. So he's going to try to distract this guard or patrolling person and say, hey, no, look over there, don't look at our party who's sneaking into your castle. And this is where I made a big mistake. And ooh, what did he screw up? Well, what did he mess up here? I had in my head that suggestion only would work on humanoids, and the figure approaching them is an undead because it is a vampire spawn. And so I had it in my head for some reason that it would only work on humanoids. I think Charm Person maybe is only on humanoids because like there's a Charm Monster is a much higher level spell. But I had Suggestion was in the same boat in my mind. So I sort of had in my head that it wasn't going to work already. And then I looked at the text of the spell and saw, well, it works on creatures. And I guess subconsciously I was looking for another reason it wouldn't work, because I'd already had in my head it's not going to work. But why doesn't it work? Oh, it works on undead. Shoot. What else could it be? Oh, it doesn't work on creatures who can't be charmed. And vampires have a charm ability, so clearly they're immune to charm, right? That's what I thought, until I was prepping this video, getting this video together, and I went and looked back at vampires. It turns out vampires not immune to charm. At least vampire spawn are not. And so I realize now the error of my ways, but obviously in the moment I sort of had in my head it's not going to work, and I was looking for reasons why. So that's sort of the lesson there, is don't have an outcome in mind before you have the whole facts, the whole situation. And it's totally fine to break rules. Not a big deal at all to break rules. I do it all the time. But I just think it's better to do it knowingly. It's better to know the rules and do it intentionally, break them intentionally, than it is to break them accidentally. To say, no, I think it makes more sense for vampires to be immune to charm, even though I know they're not, I'm going to decide it doesn't work, is better than saying, I'm not willing to look, and I had in my head already it's not going to work, and so therefore just deciding that it doesn't. So that was a grave mistake on my part. I am mortal. I screw things up all the time. Part of the game, not a big deal. However, it ended up being kind of okay that it wasn't able to work, because they recognized this individual as they came into the light was definitely a vampire, but they recognized him. It was their old captain, Vikram. Now, they had been to this island before, and Vikram was with them, or with another party, another group that went to the island that sort of split up and went in different places, and Vikram was leading one of the other groups and sacrificed his life to let everybody else escape. Well, turns out he got turned into a vampire as he stayed here, and this surprised a grand total of none of my players. It's an island of undead, it's vampires. Last they saw, their captain was alive. They were pretty sure they were going to see him in one capacity or another. However, even still, they knew it was going to happen. Still more dramatic than them not showing up again. Like, that would be really boring if they didn't see their captain who gave his life so that they could escape again. That would have been really lame, I thought. So I knew they were going to find Captain Vikram in here at some point, and this, I thought, was a really good time to introduce him. And so they begin going back and forth and talking to Captain Vikram, and he's trying to figure out, what are you doing here? I gave my life so that you would leave. Leave. And they sort of led with the line of, we're here to get you out. And he basically was like, I'm bound to the dead lady at this point. You can't get me out. If that's your goal, go. Just leave. It's better for you to leave. I'll let you go. And they're trying to figure out how much can they trust him, because he's their old captain. He's on their side, right? But he's definitely a vampire. And some of the players are like, I don't know if they have hive mind or a mind controlled, or he's compelled to tell everything to his mistress, or what that is. And so they're a little uneasy and start asking some questions, some prodding questions about the situation, and eventually bring up the Codex Mortis, this artifact. And Vikram says, well, the dead lady has recently acquired some kind of artifact because her goal has been to bring her dead husband back from the dead. And she's trying to figure out how to do that. And it basically implies that the first time she tried is when she turned everyone on the island, including herself, into undead. And so now she has taken some time, done some research, and gotten this artifact that she says will be the fix to their problems and will get rid of everyone's curse of undeath and bring her husband back. And so obviously Vikram has a very vested interest in making sure that this ritual she is doing with this artifact is going to complete. He is an undead, and man, it's a bummer if he would have to stay that way for the rest of eternity. He doesn't want to, so he wants to make sure it completes. So basically, the players then start to indicate that they might want this artifact, and Vikram says, okay, she's in the dungeons doing this ritual. I will take you there. I will lead you through the dungeons, and if there's anything in the dungeons, I'll fight it with you, on the condition that you let the ritual happen. You have to let the ritual finish, because that's my eternity if you don't let it finish. So they kind of tentatively agree and figure having a guide, a vampire on their side is better than not. So yeah, let's do that. So he helps them through the citadel, through the castle. They're making their way. And there are several groups of undead or even vampire spawn that see them, little zombies and skeletons, things like that, and who see them with Vikram. Pay them no mind. They notice them and then move on, go back to what they were doing, because they don't have to do those fights because Vikram is with them. So congratulations, guys, you bypassed a bunch of fights. And at this point, Vikram says, okay, we're here at the dungeons. I've never been in there before. I'm not allowed in there. This is her secret sanctum. Only her, like, closest lieutenants or whatever are allowed in there. I'm not one of them. I don't know what's down here, but I'm with you for whatever it is. So basically what followed is a lot of combat. Just a bunch of hack and slash and a couple of puzzles and a trap. I'll take you through what all the fights were, just so you can see sort of what my thought process was for fight design and things like that. But basically, it was just a bit of hack and slash. All right. So the first room was a ghast and like 5 ghouls. Pretty typical, pretty standard, kind of a normal combat. Next, they fight a vampire spawn and 2 wights. And after they defeat them, they see that there is a shadowy portcullis on the gate, the exit that they need to leave through and to keep descending the dungeons. And so they try to figure out how do we get out of here, and they quickly realize that you need to be touching 6 different runes on different parts of the room, all at the same time. And then the shadowy portcullis disappears, but if you let go of the runes, the portcullis comes back. And so this was a situation where I very quickly knew that they would know how to solve the puzzle, but not what their solution should be. Does that make sense? Like they would know the means of solution, but not how they would do it. And so also, I didn't know how they were going to solve the puzzle. This is a totally reasonable thing to do as a DM, is to present a problem to them and not know how they're going to solve it. That's up to the players to figure out how they're going to solve it. Now, obviously, a lot of the times you can sort of figure out, well, they could do this, they could do that, maybe if they do this. I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. They're going to have to be simultaneously 6 people touching these things, and they're too far apart for anyone to reach even 2 at a time. So how are you going to get through here? And what they ended up doing was ripping the arms off of the enemies they had just killed and propping them up to touch the runes on the wall so that they could get through it. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That totally works. That's a genius move. So next up in the room that they see they're going into, there is a bodak and a ghoul, and as they're entering the room, a portcullis drops behind them, splitting the ranged caster types from the big melee brawlers. And they figure, it's not that big a deal, it's alright, we have ranged, that's totally fine. And so that was the case right up until 4 more ghouls approached from behind them in the hallway. So now you have the party is split, facing 2 different sets of enemies, and they're trying to figure out what do we do. And what they ended up trying to do was lift up the portcullis to get their allies on the right side of it and trap the other enemies on the wrong side of it. And they managed to succeed in doing that. But because it took so many of them so long to do that, the bodak ended up doing a lot of damage to them, just from his aura, necrotic aura, and making eye contact with people and doing crazy stuff. And so the bodak was a real problem for them in terms of health, and they don't have a really good healer. They did recruit a Cleric of Bahamut NPC, who, if you're at all familiar with, this NPC was a ton of fun to play. If you're all familiar with the game League of Legends, I've played a bit of that, and I basically modeled this character after Jarvan IV, but replaced Demacia with Bahamut. And so it's like, ha! Yes! Get them! Yes! Let's go! Attack the undead! For glory and Bahamut! He was a lot of fun. It was really over the top. It was great. But he's not really a healer. He's kind of like a war priest instead of like a war priest. And so that means they don't have a lot of healing. But the bodak did a bunch of damage. And so now they are really low on resources, really low on spells, really low on health. And they go into the final room with the dead lady. So it's very clear she is doing some kind of ritual as they enter the room. In front of her is this a pedestal and a massive, massive book, like 3 foot by 4 foot and a foot thick. This thing is huge and heavy, and it's going to be hard to transport. In front of that is like a coffin with some guy laying in it. And as they begin to question her, she pauses the ritual and gives them many of the same answers that Vikram had. She wants to do the ritual, she wants to raise her husband, this is the thing that'll do it, and she says, you can have it as soon as I'm done. If it works, then I won't be undead, I won't need the book anymore. If it doesn't work, it's of no use to me, so you can have it. And basically she's saying, let the ritual finish. Either way, you can have it. And the players seem to think that she is being sincere in what she said, and their response is TBD, because that's where we ended the session. So we'll see what they say, how they think about it. Based on the table talk that happened afterwards, I think their thought process is, because we're so low right now, even if it's a bad outcome, even if the ritual makes things worse, at least we'll be rested, because they know it's like mid-morning now. They have until midnight. And so they'll be able to get a long rest here and get all their spells, all their health back, and they think, even if it's worse, at least we'll be rested, right? But right now, they don't think they can take the dead lady, and I don't either. So we'll see what they do with that. But it's going to be really interesting seeing how they kind of go forward and negotiate and discuss things. I'm going to give you 2 spoilers here. Usually I keep this channel spoiler-free because what if my players find out, but they haven't yet, so I am going to reward you guys for being such a good audience and give you 2 little heads-up spoilers. First, I know what's going to happen as a result of the ritual. It's not going to make things better. She'll bring her husband back, but he's going to be a vampire too. And so it's that choice of, if you fight now, it's an easier fight. But if you wait, it'll be a harder fight. So I don't know if they can take the dead lady as is. But I think what's going to happen is, as the ritual completes, she's going to drain and lose some of her power and will impart it to her husband. And both of them will then need to feed to regain some of that power. And so I'll probably take the vampire stat block and drop it down a little bit. As is, just a vampire by itself with my 7th level players plus a cleric, they might be able to take her. Probably not if they interrupt the ritual, because Vikram would turn on them. But 2 weakened vampires, they could probably take, maybe. So we'll see what that looks like. We'll see how much I end up weakening it. But that is going to be the result of the ritual. We'll see what the players do, if they let it happen, if they attack before. I don't know. Here's the other spoiler, though. At some point in time, later in my campaign, but not very far from now, somewhere in the next 2 or 3 sessions, I'm going to give my players access to wish. Probably 1 or 2 wishes from like a ring of wishing, a ring of 3 wishes, something like that. So we'll see how that goes, but stay tuned, obviously, for the shenanigans that will ensue with wishing. We'll see what happens with all that, but thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.